Hello, darlings. Happy to see you all here in a New York evening, -5 degrees or 10 or something. Okay, Christmas night, midnight for Anna. Yes, indeed, midnight for Anna. Civilized for the rest of you, probably. It depends on who you are, yes. So, darling people, I have no idea what you did today, but I know my sister's in Australia. I just got up for Boxing Day. I don't know if we have Boxing Day in America. I think we do it in England and Australia. And they're off to have another round of, because I have one sister who's got 7 children and they've got about 27 between them. So that sister has a very busy time fitting in all her family. Anyway, whatever. And here I am in New York. And I sat around all day, half of it in bed, getting over my cold, and half of it at my computer. Very relaxed day. And I just went for a walk, and it's like not a soul on the streets. Of course, all the homeless people, they're about the only ones. Apart from that, totally isolated. No snow, very dry. So there's a report from New York, okay? So, darling people, what shall we talk about tonight? Today, this afternoon, be our own therapist, indeed. It's the usual things. It's either, it's either what's going on in your own mind, or it's how to help others. I mean, everything's to do with our own mind. But the more we work on our own mind, the more we can sort out ourselves. It's obvious, One, we are the beneficiaries of that. But 2, we're more capable of helping others. So yes, Jay has something to say. Jay, talk to me. Talk to me, sweetheart. Oh, yes, Australia. You're
this Jay, Robina. I prefer Jay.
Jay, talk to me.
Appreciate it. All righty. Okay. So one of the things I've been spending happily a lot of time alone, and things that come up in my mind are I'm inclined toward anger, and I get angry at people, and I find myself spontaneously saying, fuck you.
Yeah? That's right. I understand you.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, I'm feeling like what I want to do instead is to substitute something afterward to sort of, in a sense, repair that relationship.
Yeah, and this, you're talking about talking to yourself, aren't you?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
Talking to yourself. Yeah.
I'm by myself, and I just think of something that's happened in the past.
Yes, that's right. So I think so this is the one. This is why they often, it's really logical. When they say, when you're with others, the best job to do is control your speech. I mean, they say control your behavior, at least don't punch and kill, but it means for most of us to control our speech. So when we're with others, we focus on controlling what comes out our mouth.
I agree. Yeah.
Then when we're on our own, that's when we can do the work of working on our mind. So it's the opportunity. It's a really precious opportunity, darling, to see, and the thing is, the ideal, I mean, we go towards it. We have to go towards it. The ideal, of course, is learning to hear the angry voice, the jealous voice, the upset one, the irritated one, whatever, before it gets to even the thought, fuck you. That's kind of like the conclusion of the story. So the real skill, slowly, is to hear the chatting away before it becomes too difficult. And so then is the chance to clarify the thoughts, to reverse the thoughts, to change the thoughts, to make it a new commentary. That's the ideal. But if we do get to the point, and then you finally, as you said, then, okay, there we go. That's a bit of anger, Jay. Well, that's interesting. And this is the interesting point about anger. When we can really, this is what I think we find quite hard in our culture. We say, well, I'm allowed to be angry, as if somehow it's sort of like saying, I mean, if we understand, okay, so that's true. We are allowed to be. We're allowed to do exactly what we like because we are in charge of our mind and our lives. We are allowed to. So already the implication there that someone's stopping us is a bit silly because there's no boss. We are the boss. So we are allowed to. But the key point, and this is what I really think takes us time, is to really see the consequences within ourself of what goes on in our mind. I think we're really developing a powerful practice when we can see that. You understand what I'm saying, Jay? I mean, whom are you disturbing? Whom are you disturbing? Nobody but yourself. It's so clear, isn't it?
Yeah. What I have been thinking is, do I then immediately reframe that and go, well, something like bless you? to
Yeah, whatever
try
you
to
like, whatever
mitigate.
it is to help you sort out your own thoughts. Because basically, it's you having a series of thoughts, isn't it? You remember something somebody said or did, and then the conversation starts in their head, and then this conclusion comes. So it's to learn to be really, either we tell it to shut up and just go away before it gets too serious, give it a break, Jay, change the subject. Or if you don't catch it until then, of course, then fix it. Of course, anything at all. Anything at all, but not out of
So
guilt,
what
not
have,
out of bad girl, but because you want to, you want to be in charge of your own mind
what
and make
have
yourself
you,
happy.
okay, so here's my question. What have you found the most effective to counteract that sort of thing? Yeah. And I understand what you're saying in terms of analyzing the thought process, but I'm just
I don't
wondering.
even mean, no, I know what you're saying, but what I am saying, not even analyzing the thought process, Jay. What I'm talking about is being involved in it to the point where you're in charge of what you're thinking. You see, we think our thoughts run away from us and we don't have a choice, but learning to know that you are in charge of the conversation in your head.
Yep. But I'm suggesting that for me, I'm thinking a thought substitution. When I wish people bad things.
I hear you really well. I really hear you. And then as I said, anything you think would be a good antidote to it is good enough.
Okay.
Whatever. But the ideal is to head towards being in charge of the voices in our head.
Yeah. I agree. It's just
That's
these
the
things
point.
come up so
Of course they do. No, of course they do.
spontaneously.
We've got to be very forgiving of ourselves because our minds are pretty uncontrolled. Whatever it is you can do to be an antidote, like give the girl a break. Oh, it's okay. Yeah, of course, anything that's an antidote to it. It's really sensible. Anything at all. And the real point, Jay, is that you're noticing, and that's the brilliance. The tragedy is most of us on the planet, we don't even notice what we're thinking until it's too late. So to actually be aware is really precious. So really just keep moving.
And I think for me, what can I say? The remedy would be to then take that fuck you and turn it into a blessing.
Yeah, of course,
to
exactly,
send positive energy to whoever it is I'm upset with.
Exactly, but it's really yourself that you're healing, nobody else. Yourself, you're healing.
yourself. I know.
That's the point. The person didn't hear it. They didn't hear it. You are doing it to yourself. This is the key. So anything you can say that's nice, it'll soothe you. Marvelous. Go for it. Do you see my point?
Don't you think energy-wise it'll do them some good?
Well,
I would hope
maybe,
so.
but I think let's just think first ourselves. When we're really powerful, yeah, we can really influence other people, but let's just first control ourselves and influence ourselves and benefit ourselves. That's the point I'm suggesting that we miss in the West. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. I don't know how to take my hand down, by the way.
You what? Oh, you what?
Good. Somebody took it down for me. Thank you.
There you go. Well done. Okay, darling. Thank you, Jay. Okay, who's next?
Cheers.
A good point. Thank you so much. So come on. So yeah, it's that piece of advice I find is very powerful, but we take so long to hear it. It sounds kind of like childish when, like your grandma says, behave nicely, but I mean, it's profound. It's a profound piece of advice. So Brian, talk to us.
Hello, Venerable.
Hello, dear.
As an observation, and I think of it, this is, I'm sure, how everyone feels as they get older. What I'm noticing is my aversion I'm becoming more fearful as I get older, and I did not expect this. I thought it would be the opposite. And I just wondered if it's something that everyone experiences as I get old. Maybe I have an aversion to, getting older and the realization that we have a short life. But I just am shocked at these thoughts, these fearful thoughts. Everything seems to freak me out more.
Say a bit more, Brian. This is fascinating. Say a little bit more.
I just think that things that I used to kind of blow off when I was younger, now maybe I have more of an understanding of how short this life is, that I just tend to be more fearful. And I'm just kind of shocked at these thoughts, and I'm shocked.
I hear you, but I really would love an example, Brian. I hear the words, but it'd be really good to give an example because I can't quite imagine what you're saying.
Just a small thing, like maybe getting an unexpected bill in the mail, and it just totally throws me.
Okay, that's interesting. Or you kind of, okay.
It's
Wow.
just weird. It's very odd. I thought that as I got older, I'd be more like, oh, screw it, who cares, you know.
You mean you're worrying more about things?
Yes, absolutely, worrying about everything.
Worrying about the world, worrying about the weather, worrying about your health.
Yeah, everything from finances to getting older and getting sick and all these things that you
Wow,
don't think
Brian.
about when you're younger. You just
I
don't think.
understand. Yeah, we have some hubris as youth with the youth, don't we?
Absolutely.
No, I know. So, I mean, I think it's okay. It's nothing wrong with being aware of these things, but to get to the point where it makes you afraid, you've got to really try and nip that in the bud. I mean, that's important, isn't it? Is it quite old, this habit, or is it just something you noticed recently?
I've noticed I'll be next month I'll be 61,
Right.
and I've noticed that in the last year, everything seems to be affecting me more.
No, I mean, I think it's not unusual. It's not unusual. I think sometimes we become more fragile as we get older. So, I mean, what do you, I mean, you've stated the problem very clearly. I mean, what do you think is the antidote? What do you think? How do you think you should learn to try and reverse this for your own sake? I mean, it's you're the one who's suffering.
Yeah, I think the work and the hard work is to catch the thoughts.
That's the point. That's what I was saying before to Jay. Half the time we don't, this is our big tragedy in our culture. We don't notice what's happening in our mind until it becomes really emotional. And that's when it gets to the surface, and it's a little bit late. Because by that point, it's kind of like shaking or shouting or very volatile. We've got to learn to pay attention before then, to hear the stories when they're small, so they're reversible. That's the real answer. That's the real answer. So really it means, I mean, do you have some kind of practice, Brian, that you find useful for yourself?
Oh yes, I mean I do my practice every morning.
Really? Okay.
Even when I'm traveling, and as a perfect example, I've just arrived here. I just worked a flight from Los Angeles to Honolulu.
Yes.
And I'm here and it's beautiful and 81 degrees. But there was a crazy energy on this flight here. It was full. People were very, it just seemed very toxic. And I think that instead of taking on this energy,
yes.
It's almost like you have to build a force field. And I just was like, why am I letting this affect me? Because
no, I hear it. You're becoming more vulnerable, Brian.
Yeah.
You're becoming, in a way, you see, when you become more sensitive to other people, it can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing. So the sensitivity has to turn into being a positive thing, because you're realizing how crazy human beings are. But the key point is, instead of feeling harmed by it, which is what's happening for you, becoming very vulnerable, if you can try and see it as a basis for your compassion for them, if that can make it stronger for you. I mean, if that's a possibility, but really seriously, if you're becoming more and more vulnerable, you've got to really, I don't know, you've got to look twice at where you spend your time. I mean, that's one of the first things. You can't wait till you lose the plot. I mean, I'm not suggesting you will, but we've got to pay attention to how we've got to pay attention to these external environments and see how we can respond, see what they do to us. We've got to be very conscious of this.
And I should say that it's the realization that, you have to do the work. And it's not
right. I mean, that's right. So you got to be able to try and get some strength from your practice. I mean, does it give you some courage and strength and confidence when you do your practice, or is it sort of a bit just you sort of do it, but does it help you?
Oh no, absolutely. I am amazed at how helpful it is just sticking to
amazing. Okay.
Yes.
So is it possible for you? I mean, is it oh yeah, I mean, the responding to the people on the flight is one thing in your job, but that's not the only thing you're saying, is it?
No, I think it's everything. I think as that aversion, as soon as something is not happening, and it's
aversion arising too very easily. So do you think it's possible to, I mean, as you are catching it and it's not too late, I mean, sometimes it can be a wake-up call. Sometimes it does mean we've got to make a change. I mean, people can get to the point. I mean, there's somebody I know who finally just completely collapsed and had to be spent 6 months in hospital because she just was not paying attention. I mean, you have to know your kind of person. You've got to know your own character. Some of us can kind of bully through things, and then eventually it just becomes too much. So we're all quite sensitive and it's quite subtle for some of us. You've got to know yourself well enough, Brian. You understand what your character is and what you can and can't handle.
And I realized that part of the at least I'm realizing that these thoughts are arising, and at least I'm acknowledging.
That's right, darling. At least that's what's most powerful. So, you know, I mean, if you can grab them and turn them around and know, and just because, I mean, if you analyze it intellectually, you know, you're not homeless, you have got a home, you have got a job, you probably have got a pension when you retire. If you sort of give them practical answers, sometimes that's a very sensible thing to do with fears. Because fears are sometimes they can be genuine. I mean, if you are homeless, then there is, you know, you could validly say you've got something to worry about. But if you just counteract those thoughts like a bill and know that you can handle it. I mean, sometimes practical answers are a very grounding thing to do. Do you see my point?
And I finally watched Chasing Buddha.
Oh, yeah.
I had never 2 days ago. And
okay.
when you were going into the prisons,
Yes.
and talking to the inmates, it really was a big wake up for me. It's like, okay, Brian, you have to acknowledge how lucky you are, because look at these men who really don't have the choices that you have.
That's right. That's right.
But at the same time, it's like, well, you have to realize that you still have a choice to change your mind, and that's what I read.
Yes, that's the main one, Brian. But you've also got to take it as a wake-up call, maybe to protect yourself. I mean, do you get your time off, and you really run your life nicely, or are you a bit overwhelmed by it all?
I think I'm just getting more overwhelmed with life in general, and that's what really surprises me, because I didn't expect to feel this way.
I understand. I understand. Well, I mean, maybe it's a time to take a break for a bit. I mean, is that kind of, does that occur to you? Is that a possibility?
Actually, Robina, in 4 months, I will be taking early retirement.
Okay, there you go. So persevere until then, and protect yourself, keep yourself on the ground, and you can anticipate what's going to happen in 4 months and be ready for it.
Yeah, I'll still be working full time in real estate, but it's different. It's very different.
I understand.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself, Brian. But it's good that you're seeing your mind. And that's often what happens is we think we're getting worse, but no, you're just seeing probably what's already been there, but you're seeing it more clearly now. So be delighted. Okay. Meanwhile, enjoy 81-degree Hawaii. Okay. Good. Thank you, darling. What else, people? Anything else? Something else? Helpful. Come on, people. Yeah, Andrea, talk to us.
Hi. I've been asking different. I guess I struggle a lot with loneliness, and I'm alone a lot, and maybe my life isn't the way it was at certain times in the past, where I had lots of people in my neighborhood nearby that I could just go in a cafe and bump into someone I know. So I can't fix this really. I mean, I can't just make a lot of friends appear nearby. I do have good friends.
You've moved away from your other neighborhood, or what?
Just different life changes, moving and other people moving, and so I just try to understand what to do with my mind when I'm alone. I have good friends for phone calls. I have friends all over the place, so it's not like I don't have friends.
Yeah. So then, do you have things you like to do when you're on your own, the things that occupy you, things that use your energy, the things you use your intelligence? Are there things you like to do that satisfy you? I mean, that's a practical question, but it's a very powerful one. Or are you sort of always wanting to distract yourself?
Often I'm wanting to distract myself. It's hard to be motivated. I did write a poem this morning. Writing poetry is good.
I mean, what about, you don't study anything or go to classes, or, I mean, is it not something that you enjoy to do to better your, I mean, you know, people like to learn more things. I mean, are things you'd like to learn more?
Yeah, it's true. I'm trying to study Spanish I'm trying to study Spanish on my phone.
Okay.
I just forget.
I know, I understand. I think a big problem is the one of we get bored easily, we don't have enough focus, and then we kind of want to distract ourselves, go and have a cake, go somewhere, talk to somebody. It can become quite chronic, you know, and we're all like that. But I think it's good to have things we should do. It's good to have a sort of like things we like to do and educate ourselves, whatever that might be. But also, I mean, there's so many things we could do when we're lonely. I think the feeling, the thought processes that go on when we're lonely is that we feel that kind of no one loves us. It can be, I'm not being mean now, it can be a little bit sort of, well, why doesn't someone love me? Why doesn't someone call me? Why doesn't someone come and see me? Maybe we're going to reverse that. I mean, and practice thinking, well, what can I do? You know, what can I mean, there's so much we could do in the world. And that, because we all know as soon as we reach out to one human being, that benefits that human being, but it also benefits us, you know. So it's really important to listen to the thoughts, because I'm not being cruel when I say they're a little bit self-pity when we're lonely, but that is what it is like. Otherwise, we wouldn't say we're lonely. If we were content with what we were doing and content with what we were progressing in and content with how we're developing as a human being, and then we could then reach out to do things for other people and have a balance of that. I mean, what do you think, darling? What do you think?
That sounds good.
So you've got to look at what it is that stops you from doing this. And I think often there's an inertia. We're all a little bit lazy, I think. We like our comfort zone, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But then we get bored and want to hop up and go here and go there to distract. But somehow we've got to, I don't know, all I'm just suggesting is that, I mean, so the loneliness, can you say words that you say to yourself when you say you feel lonely? Can you hear the words in your head? Is it about why don't people call you? Why don't people ask you to come out somewhere? You know, is it a bit like that? You're sad because people don't call you or invite you places or something like that, or not?
No, it's not really about that, because I talk with people on the phone. I have good friends, and
so then why do you say you're lonely then?
It's more like a here and now loneliness. It's like a empty time, empty.
Because you're older and people have left your life, or what?
Well, I've never had kids. I don't have a husband. I have a nice man in my life, but I mean, I don't have people in my immediate physical presence as much as I'd like to. So
you mean you'd like to be living with somebody?
No, I might, but I think more what I used to have is I could just sit in a cafe with someone and talk for a long time.
And why can't you do that now?
Because I just don't have people like that around me. I'm not in that kind of neighborhood anymore.
And what about this man you've got?
Oh, I shouldn't be talking about this on Zoom.
Nobody knows. It's okay. No one knows you. Don't worry about it.
It's just that we live kind of far away, so we don't.
I see. Okay.
Constantly together.
I mean, it's sort of interesting because what many things you're saying, you've got a life, you get sort of content with it. You're intelligent. You've got a good heart. You've got people you call. You've got people you see. But this idea that there's no one you can go and talk to in a cafe, that's the one you keep saying. And you have a friend. So I don't know. So how? Okay, I'm just talking about it. So tell me what you think the solution is. What's the solution?
I mean, the only solution I can see is actually the one you mentioned, is to become busy with things that are, like learning something,
but also busy. I mean, do you have the time and space to go and volunteer somewhere or work with human beings or animals? I mean, there must be jobs where you live where you can do things to help others. That's always incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, I'm working. I'm working. So
you've got a job, you've got people at work, you've got a man friend, you've got a house, you haven't got husbands and children, so you've got no problems. I mean, it's very curious. You've got to analyze, you've got to sort of write down all these things and then put a little argument next to it, because sometimes it's just a pervasive feeling of something missing. That's really when I'm asking these questions. I'm not sure that much is missing, Andrea. I think we often just feel dissatisfied. And so then we can't name it. So if you really be very rigorous and answer each point, you don't have, in a way, you have a full life. So, you've got to really look at this feeling, and often it's not valid. I'm not trying to discount your feelings. We've got to really be very reasonable with ourselves. Because often we feel we're not good enough. We feel we're not intelligent enough. We feel there's something missing. It's a very deep disease we've all got to some degree.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying, darling?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So one other approach is learn literally to have a different script in your head. count your blessings. It's not meant to be like Pollyanna. Really look at the things you have got, look at what you have achieved, look at your good qualities, and try and learn to be content with that. Write a new script, Andrea. I'm not joking. It's quite powerful. Do you understand?
What's that?
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do understand what you're saying.
Good. So give it a go. See how you go.
Yeah,
Report
I'll give
back
it a
next week.
Thank you. Thanks for
darling. Thank you,
talking
sweetheart.
to me.
Thank you, Andrea. Okay, who else? This is interesting. I mean, to talk about that one, it might not be because there might be something missing for Andrea, and she's got to look at that. But the thing is, this is the tragedy of what's called attachment, this simple word. Its main energy is really, literally dissatisfaction. I mean, to a most primordial degree, you know, really. It's like, we know all the sayings, always the glass is half full, the grass is greener, always the grass is greener on the other side. This is just pointing to this disease. And it just happens to be that Buddha really, really locates this and really drills down deep into this disease. It's really the chronic disease of sentient beings, that no matter what we have, it's somehow there's something missing. So if we did this, why we wrote a list of what we do have, and then try and say, well, what is it? And be very analytical about it sometimes. And you're going to find it's just this pervasive feeling of not enough. This is not uncommon. This is really more than not uncommon. It is totally normal. And of course, some people have it much worse than others. We can see that. And equally, some people don't have it so much. Some people can have actually very little, but be hugely content, fulfilled, genuinely happy people. I mean, I know some people like that. They're astonishing. Which means in the Buddhist view, they've literally practiced giving up attachment such that when they're born in this life, they're already feel quite fulfilled. I mean, that's pretty amazing. I mean, we all want that. So we have to practice it. I mean, as Lama Yeshe says, we have to learn to be content. In other words, we have to not believe the script in the head. It doesn't mean be passive. If there is something you can do to fill up a hole, then do it, you know. But we have to learn to be satisfied with what we do have. And a part of our problem with that is when we say learn to be satisfied, we think that means then you're complacent and think I don't need to do any more. No, it's like that analogy I always use. If you're learning music and you're in grade 1 and you pass grade 1 exam, you should be so happy. Wow, I passed grade 1. But instead we go, oh, I'm only in grade 1. And then you get to grade 2, oh, I'm only in grade 2, always dissatisfied, then naturally thinking, well, then I'll be happy when I get to grade 3. But you get to grade 997 and you are still not satisfied. So satisfaction doesn't come when you've accumulated a certain amount of things mentally or physically. Satisfaction is a state of mind. Satisfaction is an attitude that we literally have to cultivate conceptually, people. Learn to be content. Count, as we all know, we hear it from our grandma or whoever, count your blessings. It's not meant to be like Pollyanna. It's quite a really good point, but we have to learn it. It won't come overnight. The feeling of not having enough, the feeling of being a disappointment, the feeling of not being content is very pervasive and it's very instinctive. The thoughts are all there, but we only notice it when it kind of comes to the surface as a feeling, you know. We've got to drill down and argue with it and learn to be content, but don't think it'll happen overnight. It's quite profound. This attachment won't really go until we're highly realized spiritual practitioners, you know. So we've got to practice it and notice it and then learn. The other attitude is don't believe it. This is a very powerful practice. The thoughts will come raging up. Don't believe it, you know. This is very powerful. So what else, people? Talk to me. Okay, nobody? Any thoughts? Any points? Things to think about, talk about? Anything at all? Cynthia. Good, Cynthia.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sweetheart. Yes.
That's true. Yeah. Getting in this conversation, I think it's the same thing when you think that somebody does. I don't know if it's exactly, it's not that you're not satisfied, but when you take it, everything so personal. And I do that a lot.
You
Somebody
mean you feel you get hurt very easily by people?
somehow, somehow. And I always kind of interpretate like, oh, peraí, no. She's saying that because she don't want me to go in tal place with them and blah, blah, blah.
Okay, so that one is really coming, from a lack of confidence in ourselves and thinking that we're not good enough. And so they're not trusting what people say. So that gets right down to how we feel about ourselves, isn't it?
Exactly.
Very deep one. Yeah, not thinking we're good enough or not, and therefore not trusting or interpreting a person's behavior against ourselves, isn't it? That's what you're saying, aren't you, Cynthia? That's a very deep one, isn't it? Do you try to counteract it? Do you argue with it? Do you try to not believe it? Do you try
Yes. I'm learning with practice and listen to my mind and say, that wasn't what this person said.
There you go.
I don't know the truth.
That's right.
The truth is not always what I think.
Yes.
The person can say something, and even if I think it's not, doesn't sound, but that's not my business.
Right. But the real one, that's right, exactly. So the main thing is we have to, when we can be steady in ourselves and be content with ourselves slowly, then if a person gives us weird words, it'll be okay because we won't take it too personally. It's really quite a hard job to do, Cynthia, but you're familiar with it. You're understanding it. So that's good. So keep working on it,
Thank you for
because in the end, because the fact is, darling, some people will not like us. Some people will be mean to us. This is fact of life. So when the more fragile we are, our problem is that when we think of ourselves in terms of how other people think of us, that's when we go crazy. We have to have some steady feeling of being content in ourselves. This is the first step, I tell you. Then we can learn to be with other human beings and not go crazy. Because when we have this deep attachment to want to be loved and approved of by other people, which is the deepest attachment of all, it's almost like we're half a person and don't believe we're real until someone else smiles at us, until someone else says nice words to us. Then we feel, oh, I must be okay. But we have to learn to feel we are okay on our own. This is huge, Cynthia.
Yeah, and thank you to you. I notice my progress because
good.
I don't believe in my mind anymore.
Good, darling. One step at a time. It's wonderful. Well done, Cynthia. This is a huge one. I mean, it's easy to say these words, but this is huge one. This attachment, they call it attachment to reputation, and it sounds kind of like so silly saying it like that, but it's really quite the deepest one of all. They say it's the last one to go. It's much more than attachment to money, attachment to food, attachment to all the sense objects. They're easy to see, but this is much deeper. It's inside us. And since we're born, we have this one, so it means it's sort of like, really it is, this is like the symptom, and we're all like it, of being like a half a person, that we're not confident that what we do is good or bad until someone approves of us or disapproves. And we learn this since we're a tiny child with our mummy and our daddy, So you can't blame them for it. But if we're born with this very fragile tendency of this strong need to be approved of, and your mother smiles at you one day when you're a baby, automatically you feel, oh wow, that was a good thing to do, and you smile again tomorrow. But because mummy's a bit crazy and she now hits you because she's annoyed with you, no wonder you go crazy, because you have no idea how to behave. You've got no sense of self. That's why it's so important to be a good parent, to have a good parent, so we can learn to get a sense of what is right and wrong within ourselves and be guided by our parents. Okay, we have to accept if our parents are crazy, what to do. But we have to learn to see that it's in our mind, So we have to learn, and then that means that we're growing up. I call it like growing up, learning to become. We have this lovely saying in English, we learn to become our own person. It's a very powerful statement. It's a beautiful phrase in English. We need to learn to become our own person. And all the time we're half a person. We define ourselves by what mummy thinks and what daddy thinks and what the boyfriend thinks and what God says and what the police say, and what the government says and what the teacher says. We don't even know what we think ourselves. This is what we have to learn to do. It's unbelievably important. Until then, we're just this fractured, fragile human being, never certain that what we don't even know what we think. So it's a huge job, This is why the Buddha's techniques are so practical, to help us learn to know ourselves and learn to become clear in ourselves, using ethics as our basis. This is why it's so grounded, it's so easy. If you use good ethics as your basis, then you can become your own person. And good ethics means at least not harming others. It's very practical, And the crucial point about that is not because somebody says you shouldn't harm others, but because nobody wants to be harmed. It's like a natural law. It's very reasonable. You know yourself, you don't want to be harmed. So that's a really good basis for understanding other people. So then using ethics as a good basis to know yourself, then you can grow yourself into this ethical, grounded, content human being who has some inner strength. And then you can stand up for what you think is right because you're not afraid of what other people think. This is what we have to learn to do. This is it. Hello, Keshav. Talk to me.
Hello, Vulnerable.
Yes.
Belated happy birthday.
Thank you, darling.
How was your dinner?
My dinner was nice. And then I
Okay.
went for a walk on the river, on the Hudson River. They made
So
it very nice there. It's nice. It was a nice one. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay. My question is not something extremely specific, but it's made up of just trying to understand where am I on the path, because so this time around, it's -26 right now in Toronto. And usually I would be escaping the winters. I would be like, I don't want to be here anywhere but here. That would be my philosophy. But after watching a video of yours about choosing versus leaving the job or staying to choose. So I chose to be here.
Good. Yes, good.
And I found that to be a really good exercise in perhaps in not being resistant and accepting how life is, and then changing my mind towards it.
That's right.
Because I felt I've escaped 4 winters. Here I am back in that exact same cycle. I need to be able to figure this out, at least not just escape it.
I understand.
That has happened. And since this year, I've also had a huge shift in the way I live my life. Like I used to be extreme. I'm still very sociable. I still go out. Like I still like to meet people, but I have zero interest than what other 95% people of my age group. I don't watch a lot of Netflix. I don't go out. I don't drink. I don't smoke. All I want to do this year has just been being in my bed with my books and my spiritual life, and that's it.
So what's the question, Keshav?
It is very disorienting and jarring to be able to understand what's happening without having maybe a broader picture.
Sorry, what do you mean understand what's happening? Where? In the world or in your mind?
In my mind.
What do you mean by that? Why is it jarring?
So I am just understanding me spending so much time in my spiritual books. Is this a subtle way of aversion from what needs to be done?
It could be, but you have to know that. But my feeling is, the wisdom, like I talk about a lot, the wisdom wing and the compassion wing. The compassion wing is being out in the world, being of benefit to others in whatever way is suitable, helping the dog on the street or working in the cafe, dealing with human beings. But it implies we have to be qualified to do that. And that's the wisdom wing. So the wisdom wing really is like a retreat mode. We can do it more or less intensively. I mean, you can literally give up sex, drugs, and rock and roll and go to the mountains for several years and do the inner work. We're all doing that relatively at one degree or another. So if you're really seriously doing that and that's fulfilling, then I would suggest that's marvelous. You're not doing anything wrong. Be content with it. Trust it. If you just think you're avoiding, you'll know that. But it seems to me when I hear your words, you're very sincere. So it's marvelous. Do that. That's the inner work. And it's very private. It's very fulfilling. And it's necessary in order to become this person who then joins the world and is effective and doesn't get pulled from pillar to post, but is able to be useful. So sometimes we've got to do a bit more the inner work, sometimes a bit more the outer work at different stages in your life. So I think it sounds to me like you're doing perfectly.
And the follow-up to that, if I may ask another follow-up question,
Yeah.
I'm like out of 0 to 10, if there's outer accountability, I'm at a 10. Like if I need to be somewhere, I would be there. If this needs to be done, I will do it as long as there's outer accountability.
Okay.
But when it comes to self-discipline or inner accountability, that's somewhere in putting in the effort, I still face a lot of aversion actually to doing the effort, to doing the thing. Because in my mind, having argued and being able to interpret what's going on, I think, oh, I can't do this. Like it's too big. And because it's too big, I get paralyzed and then I end up being stuck. And this is all recent, only since the past couple of months, I've been able to unravel things, and it's a little jarring to look at what I'm looking at.
I think it's okay. Don't make you make it maybe like we talked before, just keep it more simple.
Okay.
Try and just take it more quietly, more simply, bring it down to earth. Don't make such dramatic statements about yourself. Be more precise. Don't make just general statements about yourself. I think you over-exaggerate, frankly. All right, you're doing great. Come on, one step at a time. Delight in your progress. You've got to add that to the inner criticism. We've got to find fault. Like if you're learning anything, you've got to see where you're making mistakes. But if you don't praise your efforts, you'll exhaust yourself. You'll literally you'll collapse. You won't be able to cope. So you have to. It's very tumultuous, this work. It's very scary looking deep into our mind. So be brave, have good support, see your progress, do a bit of weeping, it's okay, but then praise yourself as well. Pick yourself up and just go one step at a time, please. All right?
Yes.
Okay, Shav, you're
Yes,
doing great. Thank you, darling. I thought I'd given up when I left Santa Fe, but I think I've taken them all to New York. But everyone tells me they're all having a cold for like 2 weeks. So maybe that's what it really is. I can't believe it. So what else, people? Come on, talk to me. All these good things people are discussing. The human mind. Come on. Who else has something?
I do have a question, Venerable Robina.
Yeah.
It's in relation, it just popped up whenever you mention ethics. And then again, ethics in Buddhism is not to harm others, right? And then when I think about my life, for example, I don't want yet to leave the sex, drugs, and rock and roll and go to the mountain yet, although I want to do the retreats that Lama Zopa Rinpoche advised me to do. But then again, I would like to, recently Geshe Dawa, while we were taking a retreat on the 22 bodhicittas, told me that I should realize that not even a Buddha can enlighten all beings, although we might aspire to do so. And so I don't know if I should not to think, because sometimes I feel despair.
Okay, Fernando, you feel despair. Okay, good. Why? What do you mean you despair? Why? With what? It's a very precise point. Good. What are you despairing about?
Well, what's going on in the world with the war here in Mexico with the government and
Okay, so what you're doing is you're seeing suffering in the world, yeah? Is that what you're talking about? And it can be, and it's overwhelming, isn't it? If you just open your eyes everywhere you turn. And now because we've got iPads and computers and phones, we're seeing it all simultaneously. So it's easy to be overwhelmed. Okay, so now, if you're using the Buddhist view, which is clearly what you're doing, the only way, first you have, when you see a problem, this is good. When you see a problem, Fernando, if you don't know the cause of the problem, you'll panic, won't you? So if you go into, and if you don't know the cause, then you don't have the solution, do you? So if you don't know if you walk into go into a war zone and you walk in the tent where the doctors are and want to help, but you don't know anything. You don't know how to interpret all the broken legs and the blood coming and the screaming and the crying. You can see the problem, but you don't know the proper cause, and you therefore don't have the solution. Of course you will despair. But if you know the cause and you know how to fix it, no matter how many people are crying and yelling with their legs broken, you will be able to get the courage from fixing one person at a time. So here you're talking about the world. You want to use the Buddhist view. You know the reason there is suffering. If you don't know the reason there is suffering, then of course you'll panic. But you've got the view of karma, Fernando. That has to be the first thing. You have to first look at it and go, what's the name of this problem? So then you think, what's the cause of it? And you can list it from what you know about the teachings. But what you're doing is you see it, and then you think, what can I do to help? And you see you can't do much, so you panic and you get all guilty or something. But it's just unnecessary. You've got to go one step at a time. You've got to have courage. That's the first step. The wisdom wing is the very first step. You have to know karma. The very first one is karma. So the way to look at the world is you look at the war, you look at the injustice, you look at the criminality, you look at the corruption, and then you just tick the boxes and you can list each one what the cause is. And now you're saying, now I understand why it's there. And then the next question, you go to the compassion wing and you say, how can I help? And you know there's very little you can do. So then you say, what can I do? Just doing my practice, keep getting wisdom, keep getting compassion, and I won't give up. There's no other choice, Fernando. Thank you. That's the answer.
Yes, thank you very much.
Ground yourself. And this is, and of course, if it's too difficult being in that tent with all the broken legs, you don't go there. You try and protect your mind because you know it's all happening. But if you can't handle it, so you don't expose yourself to it. And then the other one is don't get angry with it, because that exhausts us, Fernando. You're on and on and on about the problems. It's really just anger. That is no wonder you despair. Anger is meaningless. Are we communicating, Fernando?
Yes, Robina, thank you very much, because yes, I do get angry.
Good. You see, this is the big point. What we totally confuse in the world is the difference between, we don't see the difference between finding fault and being angry. So yes, there is injustice, you say to yourself. Yes, look at the criminality. Yes, look at but then what happens is it immediately becomes anger. Anger is, how dare they do this? Look at these criminals, look at the suffering they're causing. And that's when you go crazy. So the thing is, we have to distinguish between finding fault, speak the facts. There is a war in Ukraine. There is criminality. People do lie. This is so powerful, Fernando. You've got to look it in the eye and see that's what it is. And then you know why it's happening because you understand karma. And before you even get to compassion, this is what I like to try to do. You then go, thank you for showing me how not to be. You learn from it. You take it as a lesson. Then you think, what can I do? And if there's something you can do, then do it. If not, just keep moving. Because what freaks us out is our delusions. It's not the suffering. It's not the injustice that freaks us out, Fernando. It's our own attachment and our own anger and our own panic. They are what make us crazy. This is a huge point. As Martin Luther King said, it's good to find fault. It's good to say, look at the injustice, look at the poverty, look at the racism. But then you say, what can I do to help? That's compassion. And if there's not much you can do, then as I said, you just keep moving, because it's sort of like anger is like a big surprise. It's like as if somehow this is shocking. How come this is happening? Have we not noticed? This is called samsara, Fernando. Why are we so surprised? You understand? So keep moving, honey.
Thank you, Benno.
What else, people? Hello, Catherine. What about you? Catherine, in North Carolina. Or maybe she's in Spain.
No, I'm in North Carolina.
Good.
Freezing.
Tell me
Not as
what's
cold
going on.
as you, though. Yeah.
No, not as cold as Canada, that's for sure. Minus
Right.
26. My God, I've never had minus 26 in my life. I'd faint.
Yeah.
-6 was bad enough. I went for a walk and I was dressed like with 14 layers. And I wouldn't, how do you manage in -26? That's incredible. Anyway,
I
never
don't
mind.
know.
So anyway, darling, what's going on for you, Catherine? Any
Well,
questions?
I mean, just listening to everyone, I mean, I'm going through everything that everyone has talked
There you
about
go. That's
tonight.
it.
I mean, it's samsara is just like in my face every day, always, like
That's
each one of these. And
That's it, isn't it?
I totally sympathize and empathize, and I know what everyone's talking about, because I feel like, I mean, I told you, I feel like I'm not making any progress after
Yes,
all this
exactly.
time. I feel like
Exactly.
I
know.
go through all this dissatisfaction and the reputation. Although for me, I see it's more, not so much, I mean, it's the same thing, but more the aversion to the negative reputation than the attachment to the positive
Oh,
reputation.
I see. That's interesting, isn't it? I know.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, yeah.
And the injustice, and it's all tied together.
It's
I mean,
true,
it's all the
Catherine.
same thing, but it's,
I know.
and
And I
it's,
mean, really, the bottom line is we're just so fragile. We're like little infants
Yeah.
who just can't cope, isn't it? The
it's
smallest
pathetic.
thing, it really is, the smallest thing throws us. We're like, so we should, that's why we've got to just be, that's why, Catherine, I mean, with you, I always say the same thing, and I've known you for centuries. I think you forget to see the good qualities, that's all. I mean, that we have to counterbalance the bad rubbish, which is there, with the good. And if we don't see the good, then it's all twisted. And this is what Keshav's point is. We talked about that. I think this is our biggest problem. We love to speak all the bad things. It flows out of our mouth, but we struggle to say good. We struggle to even see the good. It's so ironic. For me, I find it the most bizarre irony of ego. But, and that really is, we're very much the same. And really, it's the skill. For me, I see people, there's always a person I mention, she works in a really poor part of New York. She takes care, she does all the, and she takes care of libraries, but she's always got these positive ideas and never ends trying to find ways to solve problems and make things beautiful and help people. She's got enormous enthusiasm and she's even been almost paralyzed with some disease recently, but she doesn't complain. So she's one of these people who's more towards the optimistic than the negative. And you really, I mean, I'm not trying to make a example for us to make us feel guilty, but you can really see that as a naked example, the benefit of having a positive mind, even when things are terrible. I mean, it's not easy, but this is our only solution. This is our only choice, Catherine. We absolutely, it doesn't mean we don't see the negative, but we've got to balance it with the good and even be more, and then the good makes us optimistic. Positive thoughts, Catherine, make us feel better. Negative thoughts make us feel terrible. Even for no other reason, we should try and have positive thoughts. Forget about for other people's sake. This is even my point to Jay, the very first point. For her own sake, think a positive thought to counteract the fuck you, and if we don't practice having positive thoughts, then the negative ones just drag us down to misery. I mean, that's almost the simplest point I'm trying to make. Positive thoughts make us optimistic. And that means we have positive glasses on. That means we can see in the struggles, we can see something. And then it's also the one of what can I do? The courageous attitude of what can I do? That gives you courage. And my feeling is, even in that tent in the war zone with all the broken legs, even if you can apply a Band-Aid, better than nothing. So I think there's two things. One is more positive thoughts about ourselves, but two, reaching out to another person, another being, is a really profound practice. I know when you're really miserable yourself, it seems annoying to hear that if you help another person, you'll feel better, because it just doesn't seem to, we don't believe it. And I know your point, Catherine, you tried to help and then you thought you made a mess, This is also can be quite difficult. But then you got to see that, I think the other person, frankly, I mean, that's, never mind, I said it to you already. But I mean, it's just, anyway, whatever, blah, 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 people.
Well,
that was quite shocking, I think, wasn't it?
Well, it was interesting.
Catherine basically tried to help somebody in a really positive way, and they rejected her help. But you solved the problem, did you? You fixed it?
Well, I don't know. I think it's hard from distance and the language thing. I
Sure,
mean,
sure,
next time
sure.
I go there, then it's like I'm going to try again to have a conversation. And like, it was all, I think, part of it was a big misunderstanding, but then part of it, like you said, which was interesting, was that his pride.
I think so, definitely. A person's pride,
Yeah.
feeling that, I mean, that's really kind of insulting you in a way, because there you are, devoted, trying to help a person. So don't take it all on yourself, honey. This is so important.
Yeah.
Don't you? We would do that. That's our trouble. So you people, I mean, Catherine's really right. She's summing it up. We're all variations on the same theme, aren't we? So we've got to learn from it. But the key thing to finish with, please, let's just finish with this. When we can see, like this is Fernando's point, because we so believe the outside world is the problem. No, we so believe that what's going on in the outside world is what makes us miserable or indeed happy. But in reality, it's our negative thoughts, the delusions, the fears, the anxiety, the anger, the jealousy. They are what make us unhappy. And it's the love and the compassion and the wisdom and the kindness. They are what make us happy. If we can learn that, then we can really, that's what making progress is. Then we have courage. At the same time, we have to protect ourselves, like Brian's point, from the outside world. If it's too crazy, we can't jump in the middle of something we can't handle. But, it's the mind. As long as we can have strength in our mind to hear the negative thoughts, not believe everyone, not identify me with those negative thoughts, and to consciously, actively say positive thoughts. Negative ones seem to come from their own side. You don't have to invite them, but you have to consciously say positive thoughts. That's something quite powerful to think about. You have to say positive thoughts. You can't wait for them to come. You've got to say them. Please hear that point. This is powerful. All right, people. So it's time to go. I'm running out of voice. So happy Christmas, happy not Christmas, Boxing Day in England and Australia. It is Boxing Day for Jay in South Australia. Boxing Day now for Liverpool now 1 a.m. But it's still the 25th and everywhere else, isn't it? Okay, you people. See you all next time. No, I'm not on. I think I've done my month, haven't I? But I think I've booked up a few. I think I've booked up with Tupta Nubaling. I think I've booked up some more Sundays and some more morning meditations. I think so. So I'll see you every month at least once with this website. Oh, yeah, maybe twice. Then I'm going to do regular things in New York as well for Shanti Deva. So I'll see you somewhere. All right, darlings. Jangchub Semchog Rinpoche Makye Panam Ke Guchig Hye Panyam Pa Me Pa Yang Gong Ne Gondu Pelba Shog. Okay, people. Never give up, never give up, never give up. Thank you, darlings. Much love. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you,
Bye,
Venerable
everybody.
Robina.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you very